VIBErations podcast, part 27, Dr. Rhona Buchanan. Hi, I'm Gary Brightman, and this is my bi-weekly podcast called VIBErations. Established in 2018, Vibe is a book and music shop situated in Moi Wo on Lantau Island in Hong Kong. So what's been happening at the shop over the past weeks? Moi Wo seems to have quietened down recently for a couple of reasons, I think. Firstly, the summer is now here and the weather is less predictable and has recently been wet. Secondly, the schools are starting to break up for the summer holidays and expats, as they do every year, are heading back to their home countries for the summer. I do wonder how many will be coming back this year though. Today is a public holiday for the Dragon Boat Festival, and that should bring local families over to Lantau to visit their elderly parents and relatives. Tai has its usual annual gathering, festivities and parade. We've now cleared out a lot of stock for free as part of the ongoing Vibe version 2.0 reboot. We've expanded our stock concession with Shirley Johnson's Lantau Wren, and now sell a wider range of her products, including tote bags, hand, face and beach towels, cufflinks, umbrellas, mugs, t-shirts and much more. A reminder that we sell all 4 areas of Hong Kong government printed hiking maps. We now sell a wider range of greetings cards for every occasion, including humorous as well as Sally Bunker's botanical paintings blank cards. We have many types of wrapping paper in stock also, so finally you don't need to necessarily leave Lantau to find some gifts. The Vibe version 2.0 reboot is far from over yet though, and we still have some surprises in store for you. So keep listening to our podcasts and don't forget to subscribe to us on social media. For good reasons. Our past few podcasts have deviated slightly from Lantau businesses and people, which is my original focus for interviews. So the next few interviews see me getting back on track with local vet Dr. Rhona Buchanan and gym owner Tony Gormley. Both Scottish, by the way. There's another theme. Dr. Rhona Buchanan has a wealth of experience since qualifying as a vet many years ago. She worked for 4 years with PDSA, a UK animal-based charity caring for the health of all domestic pets of those with low income. A further 4 years as a self-employed locum, working the length and breadth of the UK. Many of the practices she covered were One Vet Clinics, where she ended up covering for the owners on a repeat basis. 4 years as a Veterinary Director for Cats Protection, a UK animal charity where she was heavily involved in supervising the welfare and care of all the cats rescued by the charity. She liaised with the Veterinary Clinics, providing treatment, and also with UK universities, ensuring the cats in her practices were receiving the best and most modern standard of veterinary care. Over the last 14 years, as part of her managerial roles, she's been proactively involved in coaching and mentoring young vets both in UK and in Hong Kong. Given there was no provision for a veterinary service on Peng Chau, Dr. Rhona has now launched Peng Chau Veterinary Home Visit Service, aiming to service the area of Peng Chau and the outer islands. She can only provide a home visit service and is therefore limited to the services that she can provide. However, when it's clear that any pet requires more attention than she can provide, e.g. radiology, surgery or hospitalisation, she has an excellent working relationship with many vet hospitals on Lantau and Hong Kong Island and can arrange a referral. She therefore offers a basic diagnosis and treatment of most conditions and of course preventative health care, vaccinations, flea, tick and worm control. She can also assist owners looking to leave Hong Kong. She is able to source and supply most medications and food supplements given 48 hours notice. So, welcome to Vibe, Rhona.
Thank you very much, Gary.
So, as we do, we're going to start off with 10 questions. Do you have a favourite book or author?
Favourite author and a series of books. Diana Gabaldon, and the series is called Outlander. The 9th book in the series is about to be published. It comes out in November, and I'm hoping you're going to stock it because I'll be rushing in here to buy a copy. And it's the latest one is Go Tell the Bees That I Have Gone. Weird how I found these books. I'm going back 30 years, and I was at a car boot sale
Okay.
And I spotted this cover, and I looked at the synopsis at the back, and I thought, oh, that sounds quite interesting.
Yes.
And then I was hooked.
Wow. It's nice when you find an author like that, isn't it, I think?
And again, there's so much. I don't want to spoil it for people, but it involves time travel. It involves a lot of Scottish history, very accurately done. She's done her research so well.
Yes.
I always sort of say it's the almost opposite of the Highlander movie.
Okay.
Which was absolutely ghastly. The history in that was just diabolical. But it has now been also turned into a TV series, Amazon Prime. And they did it very well. And Diana was actually involved in the casting and everything about it. The costumes are superb. So if there's any exiled Scots out there that haven't watched it, do. You will get homesick, though.
And moving on to your favourite musical artist.
Depends on my mood. This is where I reckon I've got a triple personality. I was born on the cusp of Cancer and Gemini, and there's all sorts of bits to me.
Right.
When I'm sort of feeling a little bit sentimental for home, it's a band called Runrig.
Okay, yeah, I've heard of Runrig, yeah.
That takes Scottish folk music to a different level and incorporate rock, and unfortunately they've now disbanded. So I love them.
Okay.
When I was a student, I was into prog rock.
Okay.
I listened to Yes.
Oh, right. Brilliant.
A lot. They were the band that helped me get through university.
Right. Yes.
They were my background music.
Yes.
But I'm also into the classics. And I lived for a while with a professional musician, and he introduced me to jazz.
Okay.
But
right.
Almost the real abstract jazz.
Wow.
I had to be a little bit tipsy before I could really relax and enjoy it.
Preferred drink?
Oh, again, I can maybe sort of say, again, it depends on my mood. And the company as well, but anything from a good quality gin and tonic through to a decent malt whiskey, and sometimes I will enjoy a pint of Murphy's or a Guinness.
Do you have a life motto?
I think my key one that I always wake up to is treat others as you would want to be treated yourself.
Yeah.
One of Rabbie Burns' poems, To a Louse.
Yes.
God give us the grace to see ourselves as others see us.
Yes. Do you have a favourite Hong Kong walk?
It's got to be anything around Peng Chau.
Tell us a little bit more about Peng Chau then.
Well, right, why did I end up in Peng Chau? We'll come back to how I got to Hong Kong, but how I got to Peng Chau was when I was offered a job here. I did a 5-day interview over here, and I was shown Discovery Bay, I was shown Kennedy Town, I was shown Port Phulam, and I thought, no, this is not me. So once I signed the contract, I had 6 weeks, so I got online, and I researched, and I researched, and I researched. I liked the look of Sai Kung.
Yes,
but I could see that the commute was unrealistic.
It's a bit remote, yeah.
So I landed on the Friday to start on the Monday, and I hopped on a ferry to Peng Chau on the Saturday, really to see if it was feasible.
Yes.
Now, the job that I first came to Hong Kong for was in Sai Ying Pun.
Yeah, okay.
So it wasn't a problem.
Yeah, perfect.
And the apartment I've got is about 3 minutes from the pier.
Wow.
So my commute into town was about
walk.
35 minutes. And literally I got pointed in the direction of the local ironmongery lady who's also was the agent for Paloma Bay. And she took me, and I managed to get my hands on the last upper story flat with a sea view.
Oh, nice.
And I'm looking straight across.
Yeah, over to this direction, towards DB.
Well, to the Trappist Monastery.
And to Trappist Monastery, brilliant.
Yeah, I've got that sunset every night.
Yes.
And then I just wandered around Peng Chau, and it has changed a bit in the last 4 years. When I arrived, it was very, very local.
Yeah.
It was all local restaurants. There was a couple of Thai restaurants, still one, and there was a bar had just opened called the Old China Hand.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it's closed at the moment because of the COVID restrictions. But I got talking to the barman there, and I just fell in love with the place. But moving on, how has it evolved? I see a lot of changes accelerating with COVID, but starting with the Troubles, where people were escaping Hong Kong, main Hong Kong, and thinking, where can we go for the day that will be safe?
Yeah.
And it started that way, and they were coming to Peng Chau. Then, of course, with COVID, and nobody being able to travel.
Yeah.
and the beaches being closed.
Yes.
We were invaded.
Wow. Yeah.
And so there's a couple of places that have opened up recently. One is a gorgeous little cafe, the Island Grocer Table. It's a couple of local girls. It's not open on a Monday and Tuesday. It closes about 7 o'clock at night, but it's become a little village hub again.
Brilliant.
And then the other thing is a guy that's set up a tennis training facility called Second Serve.
Okay.
So he's actually got this sort of, I can't describe it, but it's a really clever system for teaching tennis indoors. And he's assigned part of the building to a couple of Filipino girls who have got a little cafe running there.
Yeah.
And it's lovely too. So Peng Chau has sort of modernised a little bit.
Do you have, this is quite topical now, favourite Hong Kong restaurant?
Actually, I do. Now, this is going to seem strange because I used to think I was an obligate carnivore.
Okay.
But it's actually Hemingway's.
Oh yes, in DB.
In DB.
Yes.
And I would never have believed that vegan food could be as they produce it.
Interesting.
Their pizzas are delicious. They managed to produce the equivalent of cheese.
Right.
And they use jackfruit for meat. And honestly, I could have been taken in there and not shown the menu, and people put food down in front of me and not think it was vegetarian.
That's interesting.
Or vegan even.
Walking up to the peak and faced with a python, what would you do?
Oh, that's an interesting one, and we can have an aside story. I would just stand still and admire it and hope it would slither off.
Yeah.
But it does lead me into an experience that I had once. I was opening a brand new veterinary clinic for one of the corporates that I worked for, and we invited people that did rescue of exotic species. One of the animals that they had rescued was called Valentino, and Valentino was about 12 foot long and was a boa constrictor.
Wow. Okay.
And I just couldn't resist. I had to pick him up. In fact, so I ended up with him draped around my neck. And then one of the real characters of the place that I lived in the time called Drumfield, a guy called Howard Copley, who's a real character.
Yeah.
A bit of a music critic, actually. He dared me, and he pointed to the co-op that was next door, and he said, "Do you see that sign? It says no dogs allowed. It doesn't mention snakes."
Brilliant.
The inevitable happened.
Yes.
But actually, the people in the shop thought it was hilarious too.
Really?
Yeah, I got away with it.
So you actually went in with
the snake
a boa constrictor around your neck.
Yep.
Did anybody come out screaming?
Not really. Not really.
Yeah.
You know,
I would have.
Well, I had him fairly well under control. He was an adorable beast. He really was. Yeah, he'd been rescued from people that didn't fully appreciate the size he was going to get to.
Yeah.
And the family that were that had him, they literally had turned their very large garden into a complete reservation for these rescued animals. They had raccoons, they had meerkats, they had everything.
What's the best advice you were ever given?
Professional advice from my lecturers, I would have to say it was them pointing out that I had 2 eyes, 2 ears and 2 hands for a damn good reason.
Yeah.
And it was also never to try and look at the broader picture of what was going on with animals.
Yes.
Rather than rushing in. When I think back to me when I was 30, I would have sacked myself God knows how many times. I used to get up on soapboxes and just, oh dear. I can remember once when I was in the civil service, somebody tapping me and saying, "Rhona, stop rocking the boat, they'll throw you out of it."
Wind it in.
Wind it in, wind your neck in.
Finish this sentence. I live in Hong Kong because...
I was bored in the UK. I decided it was time to look for a challenge, and I was actually a bit tiddly in the way when it happened. Literally, what happened was I was working for this what was a massively successful veterinary corporate. Now, I had started with them when they were tiny,
right,
and to an extent, I was the builder and the architect of what they then developed to be. And I suddenly realised that the fun had gone out of it. Instead of being a builder and an architect, I'd become a maintenance manager.
Yeah.
And I wasn't waking up on a Monday morning looking forward to getting in my car and driving off.
Yeah.
So on New Year's Day, I opened up the Veterinary Record, which is the main where to find jobs, and there was this job advertised in Hong Kong.
Really? That's interesting.
And it was for what was at that time, well, I think it probably still is the biggest veterinary group in Hong Kong, which will remain nameless.
Yeah, okay.
And they had clinics in China and clinics in Hong Kong and one in Singapore, but I wasn't going to be involved with anything other than the Hong Kong ones.
Yes.
And I was, the main part of my interview was with the investors, and they really wanted somebody with my level of experience to go in and sort of try and steer things in a certain direction. So, but I fell in love with Hong Kong.
Yeah.
So I then moved on and did a 6-month stint with one of the charities.
Yeah.
That was interesting, and I gained a lot from it about animal welfare in Hong Kong.
Yeah, and this was 4 years ago. This was
I was with the first.
2015,
It was 2017 when I landed.
Yeah.
I was with the first group for about 18 months. Then I was with the charity for about 6 months. Then I sort of set myself up as an independent consultant and helped some local investors set up a clinic in Kennedy Town. Did that for 6 months. Then I worked with a group in Singapore remotely because COVID had kicked in. But during all of this, I was being approached by people on Peng Chau saying, we haven't got a vet. I also did some locum work, and I'm happy to mention the name of this group, for Creature Comforts, who do home visits.
Yes, I've heard of them, yeah.
And they do it so well, so I almost cut my teeth on what looked like a good home visit service with them. But they don't cover the outer islands.
Do you have a favourite area of Hong Kong?
I think you've got that one.
Yes, I think I have. Yeah.
It is. It has to be Peng Chau.
Peng Chau.
It has to be. It's home.
Okay, so we heard earlier on about 2017. You answer an ad, you come to Hong Kong, and then you start working here. Since then, how has things developed?
Well, I've gone very much from the business aspect to the clinical aspect.
Yeah.
But I still keep my business brain on.
Right. Okay.
And I'm always available for anybody, to be honest, in any service industry.
Okay.
To give advice. But what I think I realised was there was not only was there a business niche.
Yeah.
For what I'm doing now, there was also a need.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think it was probably the need that drove me more than
it's interesting.
The niche.
Yeah.
And a lot of people will say to me, well, why don't you have your own clinic? Well, that would be a seriously major financial commitment and potential milestone.
Yes. Yeah.
And as long as I'm prepared to accept the limitations of what I can offer people.
Yeah.
So that to an extent I will at times just triage and say, look, I can't help you, you must go to another clinic.
Yeah.
The other thing, of course, I'm on my own, so I can't be available 24 hours.
Yes.
And this is something anybody listening to this and think, oh, I want her to be my vet, please be considerate of this fact.
Yeah.
I will help whenever I possibly can.
Yeah.
But I can't be all things to all people.
And I see your hours you keep on your card. They're 8 until 6 p.m. Outside of that.
Yeah, I have
roughly.
I do have to say that I kind of screen my WhatsApps.
Yes. Yeah.
And if I see something that is obviously an animal in distress, I won't get, if it's something very, very close to me and round the corner, and that has happened on the odd occasion, I will go and help.
Yeah.
But if it's not feasible for me to get to that animal, I will pick up and I will say to people, look, it sounds as if your cat, a good example, has got a blocked bladder. This can be very serious. And no, this must not wait until the morning.
Yes.
You need to find a way.
So at least you give people some pointers and advice in the right direction.
Even then, I can't always guarantee that I will pick up, because obviously if I'm out at a dinner party, phone's switched off. Yeah. But whenever possible, at the end of the day, I'm a vet and I do care about the animals.
Yeah, yeah.
So I will do my best to offer advice, but I can't be available.
As you say, there's only one Rhona. You can't do. I mean, our good friends, Tails, Eslin.
Oh, fabulous! I do work for them.
Yeah.
And of course, the wonderful Oka.
Yeah, and Oka as well. Yeah.
Well, Oka, I actually I have a regular stint in Moi Wo every Wednesday.
Yeah.
Oka gets the first slot, so I can vaccinate all her dogs. Yeah. And then I can usually do 2 or 3 other private visits at the same time, on the same day. Eslin, she fosters quite a lot of animals over in Discovery Bay, and I will see them there.
Yeah.
And I also work with Paws Foundation that are based in town, but they do a lot of fostering in DB as well. Yeah. So I literally do a lot of work with all of them, giving them a pretty healthy discount on my fees. But what I'm really impressed with, and I really want to labour this point, because these charities all seem to pull together and cooperate with each other. And this was something that when I previously worked for a charity, I wasn't so aware of. There
Yeah.
seemed to be rivalry, right? We need to grab all the donations, and
yeah.
these guys, I just cannot believe how closely they work together.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's no rivalry and jealousy between them.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Orca prefers dogs. Estlin prefers cats.
Yes, true. Yeah, yeah.
And but occasionally Estlin will have a dog that she's struggling with, and Orca will help out by taking it to the kennels and getting Sarah, the behaviourist,
Yes.
that they all use to help. So it's almost like a team of teams, which is fabulous.
It is fabulous, isn't it? It's good to see, and it's good that there isn't any of that rivalry. The right thing is happening for the dog and cat population.
If I could have done one thing in Hong Kong, I would have liked to replicate what happened in the UK around about the time that I was involved in charities. And there was an organisation set up called the Association of Dog and Cat Homes.
Okay.
And what happened there was that the big boys like the SPCA, Cats Protection, Blue Cross, encouraged the smaller groups to join up and then offer them advice and guidance. But sometimes they found that these smaller groups had some excellent ideas.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And they learn as well.
Yeah.
There's one group in the UK at the moment that I'm absolutely fascinated by called Rescue for Dogs.
Yeah.
And they are doing non-kennel situation. The dogs, they have a huge amount of ground, which obviously we can't do in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And the dogs are split into compatible groups.
Right.
And they're allowed to sort of... basically, the dogs are the therapists.
Wow. Yeah, yeah.
And I'd recommend anybody interested in animal welfare.
Yeah.
What they're really doing is they're treating dogs as dogs should be.
Yes, yeah. Well, that's what I you may cringe here, but I always like to watch Cesar Milano, and she did cringe, by the way. But what was always came across with that is that he was basically training the owners. He wasn't necessarily dealing with a dog or a bad dog or a bad cat. It was more the behaviours of the owners not doing the right thing.
Absolutely, and totally, yeah. There are very few bad dogs in this world.
Yeah, they're not necessarily born bad. Yeah.
And we as humans do have a tendency to anthropomorphise with our dogs and our cats.
Yeah.
And also, to some cat owners think that cats are small dogs. They're not. They all have very different needs.
Yeah, yeah.
Very different needs. And quite often, especially with cats, I will often see that some of the health issues are a result of stress factors coming from the environment that the cat is in, and trying to persuade owners to adjust the way that they see a cat.
Haven't you? That's a totally different.
Yeah. But it is. When I was with Cats Protection, which is part of my background, I worked with one of the top animal behaviourists at that time, a girl called Rachel Casey, and I learnt so much from her about this aspect of the environment of an animal impacting on its health. And to an extent, moving through and going back to what I'm doing now, so often by doing a house call, I can achieve a lot more than seeing the animal in an artificial environment in the clinic. I can often get them to be relaxed. I can also see how they're interacting with the owner.
Yes.
I can see a lot of things.
How things are set up, how they can move around, what they're allowed to do, etc.
Yeah, and more often than not, 90% of the time, the animals will be more relaxed with me.
Yeah.
The only odd difference to that is the biggest issue vets have when dealing with animals is fear aggression. Now, with some animals, they completely freeze with fear aggression in the consult room. These are the ones that when you see them at home, I've got enough self-confidence and are territorial. Yeah. And they'll say, "You're not getting near me."
Yeah.
And I have faced that with one or two cases here. Yeah. Cats in particular can be quite tricky.
You were trained as a vet to deal with any animals?
All vets in the UK are trained. It's ridiculous. You might plan never to be anything other than a small animal vet, or you might plan to never be anything other than a farm vet, but you have to do the whole curriculum,
right? Which
puts a lot of pressure on the curriculum. It's a tough old course.
Yes.
And there is a lot of arguments within the veterinary profession that there should be the opportunity to diverge, and take the pressure off
Because it's a 5 year, 7 year?
Most college vet schools are 5 years.
Yeah.
There are the odd ones where it's 7, and they also do a sandwich course. Cambridge is the classic. They thought, they had the theory, probably quite rightly, that you could bring out a more rounded personality if they did a further degree in something completely different whilst at university.
Do you have a favourite sort of animal? You were saying Eslin's cats and Ocker's dogs, yeah. What's Rhona?
I have to say, it's probably the dog that I first rescued when I came to Hong Kong. She's just a little street dog, and Lucy is the most intelligent creature I have ever come across.
Yeah.
She considers herself my bodyguard. She's also the most amazing judgment of character.
Yeah.
The quicker Lucy accepts somebody and allows them to stroke her, the more confidence I have that that's somebody that I should get to know. She's quite a character. I also love horses. That should come out as well, but I can't afford to get on them. Yeah. It's one of the things I miss from Scotland is just being able to get on a horse and just head for the hills.
What was your earlier life like, and why did you go into being a vet? Right,
if we go right back, I was born in Aberdeenshire but quickly moved to Perthshire, to a very agricultural area. I very quickly realised that I had an affinity to animals. Also, my mother's background and my grandfather's background and my great-grandfather's background. My mother was a riding instructor before the war. My grandfather had a ranch in Rhodesia post-Boer War, and he bred horses. And going right back, my grandparents originated from the island of Lewis, and and his father was the only farrier and horsebreaker on the island of Lewis. So that, there was a strong gene pool there. Yes. On the other side, my father was probably one of the original dropout bank managers stroke financiers, and he became a youth hostel warden. He had quite a shrewd business brain on him. I suppose I was very, very fortunate. I lived in a youth hostel in the midst of nowhere. Didn't have the opportunity to travel, but to an extent I didn't need to, because the world came to us. In the winter I was able to ski. In a place called Glenshee. And in the summer I was riding horses. I would come back from school, grab my dog. At the time it was a Jack Russell, and I'd just head for the hills.
Jack Russell.
My park was hundreds of thousands of acres that I could just free roam in. So I was a complete tomboy. Complete tomboy. And I suppose I can remember at one stage, I did actually think about becoming an architect, because I wasn't sure that I would cope with the emotional trauma of having to euthanize animals. Yes. And I did get over that. Must be tough. I went back to it. It was always in me that I wanted to work with animals. Also, my mother said, at one point I was going to pack up, and my mother pointed out to me that if I wanted to follow her steps, I would always end up working with other people's horses and never owning my own.
True, yeah.
Now, at one point when I lived in Northern Ireland, I got a bit carried away, and I had 5 of my own. It was in my genes. I went to Glasgow Vet School, managed to plough my way through that within the 5 years. Wanted to work with horses, but I quickly realised that horses are wonderful, but sometimes their owners are not so wonderful. Okay. The Glasgow course was a bit weak on horses, so I then moved to Edinburgh Vet School as an intern in the equine department, did a year there. Then I went into farm practice. Then I ended up in the civil service in Northern Ireland and discovered I wasn't very good at being civil or being a servant. That's another story. Northern Ireland I love Northern Ireland. My son was born over there.
Oh, okay.
So he was born in Ballymoney.
Wow.
I remember my husband saying to me when he came to because I didn't want him there when I was actually popping the child out. He said to me, I've worked it out on the way here. You're Scottish so you can play for Scotland. I'm English so he can play for England. He's been born in Ireland so he can play for Ireland, and I wouldn't want him to play for Wales anyway. Sorry to all Welsh people.
Yes.
And he wasn't talking about football.
Right. Brilliant.
So then
he had options.
Then I decided, I can remember, this is probably quite interesting as well. I was still working in farm work, and I can remember one morning, 1 o'clock in the morning, having had to take an oversized calf out of a heifer that shouldn't have been bred to the bull it was, and being livid with the farmer, and then even more livid with him, and he says, you'll need to wash your hands, lass, and he produced this bucket of water that had about an inch of ice on the top, and that was the best he could do.
Oh my God.
And I thought, I've had enough of this.
Yeah.
So at that point, I didn't feel as if I needed more practical experience in small animal. So I joined a group called the People's Dispensary for Sick Animals.
Okay.
I worked for them for 4 years, and that was a real baptism of fire because so busy. We would, when I look at the work rate of vets in Hong Kong, and they think they're busy if they see half a dozen people a day, we were seeing 30 people in morning consults.
Wow.
And going into theatre and thinking, oh gosh, there's only 12 on the board. So
Yeah.
it was. So I worked for them. Then I ended up setting up as a sort of a locum vet, travelling the length and breadth of the UK, and specialising in one-man bands and covering those.
Okay.
However, I'd also had an injury to my neck, partly from my horse riding activities and partly because I had a rear end shunt, and I did have I had two neck discs that prolapsed. So I can justifiably be called a bit of a cow. So I've got a cervical arthrodesis. Doesn't affect me much, but where it did affect me was in theatre.
Yeah.
So if you're bending over, my fingers would go numb. Then one day I saw this advert for regional director required for a corporate, and this was a group called CVS UK Limited, and I joined them, and I was with them for 8 years. Yeah. And it was a rocky road. Yeah. But it led me to then working with the other group, IVC Evidencia. Yeah. The one that I've mentioned. Yeah. And I have to, and I'm going to mention a name here, and if sometime he actually listens to this, thank you, David Hillier. He was the CEO and just the most astonishing boss I have ever had. Right. It was interesting. One of his Bibles was a business management book called Good to Great. Right. Which is a fascinating book for anybody in business. It was almost an analysis of American corporates and looking at them within a 10-year span, and the ones that had been good, and how they evolved, and some went on to be great, and others disappeared. Right. And what this book did is that they looked at the reasons as to what made the great ones succeed. David really applied a lot of the learnings in that book. Okay. So it's a book I would recommend to anybody in business. I was with them for 8 years. I can remember, it wasn't so much an interview. I was headhunted, and I was visualising this today. I met up for coffee with David Hillier and one of the founding vets, and it was such an informal conversation. And I can remember them saying to me, Rhona, we're interested in learning from you, not what CVS is doing right, but what are they doing that is wrong, and how can we avoid it? There's a lot I can say about that, but the biggest thing that I said to them was, don't respect your ex-owners, especially those that have got successful clinics. Yeah. And succession plan. Succession planning was key. Yeah. So it was a case of those ex-owners you're going to want to move them up into middle management. Yeah. But then if they move up, you've then got to look within the clinics as to who's going to step into their shoes. Yes. Yeah. You need another leader. It might be another vet. Yeah. It might be a nurse. Yeah. Don't always assume that your highest earning vet is going to be your best leader. Quite opposite. Yeah. And we then took it a stage further, because these 4 or 5 year experienced vets were going up to the clinical director role and leaving a vacuum. Void. So this is the thing that I'm really proud of. We then suggested that we set up something called a new graduate training academy, because the most difficult years of a vet's life are probably the first 2, and if they get the wrong job, it's catastrophic. To the extent it can be tragic. At best, we'll leave the profession. Yeah. And sometimes take it a stage further. Total waste. And the incident of suicide within the veterinary profession is deemed to be the highest of any profession. And a lot, and I would beg any pet owner, take this on board when you feel as being critical of your vets or a vet that you have seen on social media. Yeah. Please do not do it. All right, so there you are, you're passed. You then apply for a job, you come to Hong Kong 2017, and here you are in your dream place, Peng Chau, and now you're self-employed, working the daytimes. How do you get work at the moment? Is it largely referral? Oh, it's so much now. When I started, I started with a core of friends.
Yeah.
I worked pretty hard on Facebook. My webpage at the moment, which is apparently is down for numerous reasons.
Okay.
I did a little bit of work on that. I did quite a bit on Facebook, and I'd learned about marketing in my business life. But it's more and more now just personal recommendation. It's snowballing.
Yes. Yeah.
And what I am hearing is that people are mentioning me on forums.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's word of mouth.
Yeah.
Which is, of course, the most powerful marketing tool. What's my next move? I don't really have one. I'm going to carry on doing what I'm doing. And a rescue dog will always be a special dog.
Yeah.
So all of you people thinking about getting a dog out there, don't buy rescue.
Yeah, exactly. Rescue. The options are here. The options are with Ocker.
There's so many variables. Yeah.
With tails as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
What if somebody wants to get in touch with
Rhona?
Rhona?
Facebook page, Island Home Vet. I think it's Island Home Vet Service.
Yes.
I'm quite happy to give out my WhatsApp number, but please remember, I am only one person.
Yeah.
I will do my best to respond when I can.
And that you're based on Peng Chau.
And I'm based on Peng Chau.
Yeah.
I do come to Moi Wo quite regularly. I do go to DB quite regularly. DB, I'm probably a couple of days a week. Peng Chau, I kind of fit in.
Yeah.
I'm completely working on my own. I'm lucky I've got some great management software that does a lot of the admin for me.
Yeah.
But I do need quite a bit of office time. But my number is 90122595.
Okay. All right. What sort of people would come to you? I mean, I don't know. Let's give my example. I've got 3 dogs, of varying ages. They generally are healthy, have a good life. Mm-hmm. What could you offer me?
Right. What I always say to people is I can offer anything that doesn't involve an anaesthetic or requirement for an X-ray or hospitalisation. I can, in certain circumstances, if I can find myself an extra pair of hands and the dog's fairly handleable, run bloods, because I can send that to a laboratory. But again, I'm erring caution there. Certainly can deal with vaccinations, including rabies, microchipping. Going to a more emotive subject, again, it's timing on this, but I do what I call end-of-life consultations.
So that's interesting.
And again, this is a huge area, particularly when it involves religious hazards to this. I genuinely have, when I go from being that vet that said, I don't know if I could handle doing euthanasia, to now feeling that it is a privilege that I have, that I can avoid animals having to suffer unnecessarily.
Needlessly,
And also, and I try to do a little bit of bereavement counselling both before the event and after it, and say to people, you are not being cruel here, you are being the opposite of cruel.
Yeah.
Life has become a burden to your animal.
Yeah.
Actually, I can remember once doing a lecture to students, and it was actually role play we were doing, and they were faced with having to persuade this lady to have her cat put down.
Yeah.
And what I did, it was actually an actress that I stepped in, and I said to the lady, I said, have you ever had a very, very wish you could die hangover? Yeah. And there was a wry smile from the whole audience, and this lady did say yes.
Yeah.
I said, could you imagine if you were going to feel like that for the rest of your days? Every morning you woke up, you were going to have that pounding headache, not wanting to get out of bed, and just wishing that you weren't here. Yeah. That's what a dog or a cat in renal failure feels like.
Yeah, okay, that's a very good analogy, I think. Yeah.
So, again, it goes to not only should you be treating humans as you would be treated yourself. Yeah. Yeah. But also animals.
Animals as well. Yeah, absolutely. Now, there's something you mentioned to me early on as well, I think, which was quite an interesting thing. So, somebody's at home, they've got a sick dog or a sick cat. Often some of the things that you do is they can call you and you will say, send me a photo.
Yes. This is where social media and WhatsApp is a boon. Yeah. I have got on, I haven't really sort of pushed it, but I have, as an offering, got video consults that I can do. I charge $17 for them. If that was then going to convert into a home visit, I then discount $17 off.
Yeah, well, that sounds very, very, very fair.
So, it is something that I could possibly be starting to promote.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
again, I can't always be guaranteed to be able to do it immediately, but
No.
there's a few cases where people will get really panicky because they'll see a tiny little scratch on their dog, and do
Yeah.
I need to take him on the ferry to?
Yeah. Yeah, and that a lot of that what they're looking for is is it the right thing and the wrong thing?
It's
and that's,
it's just
I would
giving
pay
people that
$17 for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But the key things that I always fear is the blocked bladder syndrome is quite a common one. An animal is, especially males, cats in particular, struggling to pass urine. That means a blocked bladder, which in turn will shoot the kidneys to pieces, and that should be dealt with fairly quickly.
Yeah.
The other one is sudden bloating in dogs, basically torsion of the stomach.
Right. Okay. Some sort of gastric.
Basically the stomach twists on itself, and
nasty.
it can the animal will only be saved if it is taken into a clinic immediately.
Yeah,
And of course,
maybe
snake bites.
An operation.
Snake bites is another thing. If you feel that your dog has been bitten by a snake,
yes,
contact a clinic immediately. Try, if possible, to either get a photograph of the snake or use the snake book. I'm promoting all these books for you.
Yes, use the snake book.
Use the snake book
sale here at Vibe,
to try and identify the snake.
Yes,
And because that will help the clinics say, right, you need to get it in.
Yeah, if it's venomous,
it will also, it's also limited clinics that hold stock of antivenom. Because it has very short shelf life and is also very expensive. SPC is always probably the safest bet.
Yeah.
So again, some advice for people there. Yeah.
Okay, and then so one other thing that strikes me as well, there's a lot of people repatriating at the moment to their varying countries, and so they've got animals here and they want to ship them out. Would you be a good person to talk to regarding?
Yes, I am doing a lot of that work at the moment.
Yeah.
The scale of simplicity varies from South Africa, that is practically impossible at the moment.
Right.
They are very specific about a blood test that has to be done and the lab that it has to be run at. And I believe, unless somebody can correct me on this, that it is a lab in South Africa that is currently closed because of COVID restrictions.
Okay.
So that blocks the door. The next trickiest are probably Australia and New Zealand. You're looking, certainly with Australia, it's a minimum of 6 months. Your dog has had to have had a fairly recent rabies injection, probably within the last 18 months, then has to have a blood test.
Right.
If it passes that blood test, you still have to wait 6 months.
Right.
Before you can move the dog. Easiest, Canada.
Okay. Well, that's a well-trodden route between Hong Kong and Canada. So,
Canada is fairly simple. EU stroke UK, a lot of bureaucracy and paperwork to get through, but again possible. Very difficult to do unaccompanied. You would have to try and either have a friend travel with the dog.
Yes.
I won't bore you with the details, but it all comes down to the logistics of having to do a pre-flight check and get it verified by the EFCD. Yeah. But anybody that I'm more than happy to give advice about that. It can take a bit of time, so I would have to put some sort of fee on advice that I give.
No, absolutely. I think it's really just a question. I think for the listeners, can they talk to you about it? I'm sure they would be more than happy to pay for the advice that you would give on where they.
The other thing I utterly stipulate is that I will not take legal liability. It's up to owners to do all the research. Either use an agent who will take liability. Yeah. Or do all the research yourself. Yeah. I will then work with your agent or yourself and say, right, you've got this paperwork, this is what it says we need to do, but it's up to you to make sure that that we've covered everything. Yeah. That is a definite stipulation. The other thing, the big issue at the moment is availability of flights.
Yeah, of course.
Particularly Australia, and linked into that, once the animals get to Australia, they have to go into quarantine for 10 days. Right. And linking your flight to the quarantine. Yeah, okay. I'm dealing with an Australian one at the moment that I'm working in both with the owner and the agent, and it's getting the flights that are the nightmare. Yeah. Even getting to Canada, it's flights.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that's good. It's good just to know that you can advise in that area, I think, and that you can advise on current situations with animals. And you have very good links with, OCCAs and TAILS and SPCA.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And certainly going back to my Facebook page, I have done a few bits and pieces about pet relocation.
Yeah.
Including the most gorgeous video of a dog that ended up back in Sweden recently. And it was started with the dog here, and the girl, the daughter is staying behind.
Brilliant.
And so there was the dog going on the plane, and then the father meeting the dog in Amsterdam, and then the dog landing in Sweden, and the family at the airport seeing it, and then I had to reach for tissues when she sent me the video, and that they finished with the dog in Sweden. The dog had never been off DB, looking at this world that was nothing but grass and space, and just go, I can't believe this.
Yeah. So even the animals are getting better holidays than we are these days.
Certainly.
Yeah. The repatriation.
Repatriation of pets. It is very tricky, but that video shows you that it is worth
doable.
it.
Yeah. We here at Vibe have a stack of your business cards, and so you can come to Vibe. We will put you in touch with Rhona.
Yep,
so
absolutely.
That's Dr. Rhona Buchanan.
Yeah, the one thing I would say is my website is down at the moment, and I'll also add in my safest email is Rhona Buchanan at btinternet.com.
Okay, so Rhona Buchanan at btinternet.com.
Good old BT.
Yeah. Okay, so that just remains for me to say thank you very much, Rhona.
It has been an absolute pleasure.
You can listen to all our podcasts published at SoundCloud under Gaz, or on YouTube under Live at VIBEHK, or following the links from my website at vibehk.com. Finally, a reminder that Vibe is open 7 days a week, every day of the year, from 12 noon until approximately 6:30 p.m. Well, that's it for another week. Thanks for listening to the 27th Vibe Book and Music Shop podcast called VIBErations. I'm Gary Brightman. You get my vibe?
Can you imagine what this old island must have looked like to those Dutch sailors when they first saw it? Fresh green. Like a dream of a new world.
They must have held their breath. Afraid it would disappear before they could touch it.